Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sermon Braindump. My name is Scott Dalen. I'm an ELCA pastor in Southwest Iowa, and I present these videos every week for a couple of different reasons. The first of which is just take my brain out of the mode of background work back here over the course of the week as I kind of work through and ponder on the text and move into the process of actually writing and preparing the sermon that I'm going to preach to my congregation for the weekend. That's the first reason for doing these, and the second reason is just to allow you, the viewer, who have come across this video for whatever reason has brought you here today, to gain some different insight into the assigned gospel text for the week. So that's why I do these. This particular Sunday, which will be June 25th, 2017, the last Sunday of June, the last Sunday of the first half of 2007. That was weird. The last Sunday of the first half. Weird. We're halfway through 2017. Wow, mind blown. Where's it gone? Anyway, tangent. June 25th, 2017, third Sunday after Pentecost. Our assigned gospel text is Matthew chapter 10, verses 24 through 39. Now, this is a continuation of where our gospel was last week. It's still kind of in the same mode. Now, if you recall, if you happen to catch last week's video, or if you're familiar with what the assigned text was for last week, Jesus has been traveling around. It's fairly early on in his ministry, but he's been proclaiming that the kingdom of God has come near, the kingdom of heaven has come near. He's been healing. He's been curing diseases. He's been curing infirmity. He's been curing. He's been casting out demons. All of this Jesus has been up to, miracles of various kinds and proclamation. And then he sees the crowds and he realizes the crowds are bigger than he himself can handle in this bodily form. So he calls the disciples to him and he empowers them to do the exact same thing. That was last week's text. This is a continuation. Now, last week's text had a portion that I did not read. It was like verses 9 through 23. And it kind of started, Jesus was talking about some of the hardships, some of the trials, some of the difficulties that they will face as sent apostles, as sent disciples, as they've joined together in this work that Jesus is doing. And this is a continuation of that. That's really what's happening here. It's a pretty long teaching. It actually even goes a little bit beyond the ending of this, which will be in, I believe, next week's gospel. So all of that is going on. So that's kind of all cycling out here, that this Jesus movement is going on, but there will be opposition. There will be those who will oppose. There will be division over the gospel and over this new invitation for humanity to move forward that God is up to through the event of Jesus. So all of that is kind of cycling around out there, and there's going to be those who are not going to be happy with what goes on. That being said, let's go ahead and jump in. So that's the background. That's what's going on. So Jesus is still talking to the disciples, and we hear him say, a disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing in secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, and even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid, you are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. All right, so that's it. So as we look at this, there's a lot of like little sayings. I was in a conversation with some fellow pastors this week talking about this text, and one of them made that comment. It's like, this is a lot of little teachings of Jesus. And different scholars will argue, is this all one branch? Or did Matthew like condense these different teachings down into a single a single time or a single like discourse throughout this. And I'm going to let you decide that for yourself. I can't tell you one way or the other, but there seem to be a lot of different little teachings going on, or little different individual things. When we consider the setting, which I talked about a moment ago, of what's happening here, it seems that discipleship is hard. Discipleship brings with it difficulties and trials and things to endure. It's not all sunshine, sunshine and roses. It's not all moonbeams and happy days. But there are difficulties that will come. That the world is full of darkness. Now that's kind of a John thing, and if you've heard, that I like John's gospel. But the world is full of darkness, and the darkness will battle back against this earth. A couple of weeks ago, my video was on the creation story out of Genesis 1, and talking about the earth being subdued, that God invites humanity to subdue the earth. And when you think about subduing, whatever you're subduing is going to fight back. Well, Jesus, who is the light of the world, God's light in the world, is somehow battling against the forces of darkness. And I believe that there are forces out there that are seeking to oppose what God is up to. And I can't explain that really any better than that. Just that there are forces of darkness that have power in the world, that have authority in the world, that have status in the world, and the gospel threatens that. And so oftentimes we will see opposition against it. And that, I think, is what Jesus is aware of. That's what he's already been experiencing within his ministry. He knows the disciples, as he sends them out empowered to do the same thing, they're going to experience it. He knows that his followers who have come along afterwards, up to and including us, will face the same thing. And this is just a reality of this existence, that God is moving it towards greater unity, greater love, greater joy, all of this stuff that's been promised through Christ. God's moving our reality towards it, but our reality is battling it. So that's why I think Jesus has so many different things, like expect this, and you can expect this, and this is probably going to happen, and people will oppose you, and that's a pretty major theme in Matthew's gospel. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but this is some bigger news stuff about Matthew's gospel. Matthew is considered to have a Jewish audience. It was written, it was recorded around the end of the first century. We don't know precisely, but end of the first century, first part of the second century, kind of in that window. And by this point, Jerusalem's been destroyed. In 70 AD, Rome came in and just destroyed Jerusalem, just kind of almost wiped it off the map. So the temple's gone. Temple, priestly, religious type things, that's all gone. And now it's really gone into the what's called the rabbinic movement, the importance of the rabbi, the importance of the synagogue, the importance of the smaller Jewish community. That's kind of where some of the authorities come. And the Pharisees, who I tend to call biblical bad guys, they have really been a catalyst in that movement that is trying to continue Judaism in this direction. And now Christianity, which is this movement that centers, of course, around Jesus and then the apostles, and then kind of grows from there. It also kind of lays a little bit of claim to Judaism at that time. It's called the Way, and so it's kind of going in this direction, and the Pharisees and the rabbis are kind of going in this direction, and they're really kind of at odds. So that's where some of this division that Jesus is talking about here is coming from. And when we hear him talk about the households being divided against themselves, that's a really strong aspect of that, that for these Jewish Christians, the people who were raised Jewish, but then they become Christian, they become followers of Christ, they become disciples. They would have experienced this division within their own families. That once they've made that claim in their lives, that they are kicked out of the synagogue, so they lose that community. Families will disown them. Families will not talk to them, and that's a pretty major situation that they're facing. So that's some of where this is coming from as well. What's going on here? there's some other stuff at work here, some things that I could dive really deeply into, and I did some in my prep work this week. So there's the early thing that Jesus says, if they call the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they do for the members of his household? Beelzebul is a demon. Some would consider him to be Satan. Some consider him to be like the second highest demon, second only to Satan or Lucifer. I've heard other things indicate that there's some belief that just as we have the Holy Trinity, there's a unholy Trinity made up of Lucifer and Beelzebul and one other demon that I can't recall off the top of my head. I don't know that much about demons, but Beelzebul is also at times called the Lord of the Flies, and it was considered a really major insult, particularly in the Jewish culture. To call someone Beelzebul or say they were a follower of Beelzebul is, pardon my French, to call them you are shit and you attract flies that feast on shit. so for the religious leaders to call Jesus Beelzebul, or that he casts out demons by the power of Beelzebul, is saying that you are full of shit and you attract flies. And so when Jesus is saying, if they call me that, what's that mean for you who follow me? Like, you're the flies who feast on shit? Lovely. So, I mean, that's deep. That is a huge, deep, deep insult. And at this point in Matthew's gospel, we actually haven't heard that yet. So it's kind of weird that Jesus brings this up at this point. Later on, he will cast out some demons, and some of his opponents are like, it's by the power of Beelzebul that he can do this. It's because he calls on the highest demon, the Lord of the demons, and the other demons have to listen to what he says. And Jesus is like, are you mental? It's like, why? And he goes into this thing about like a house divided against itself cannot stand. Like, why would a demon act against other demons when they're all acting against what God is up to? That comes, I think, chapter 12. So it's a couple chapters down the road. But that's in there, and that's an interesting situation. And if you want to go to Wikipedia, it'll tell you a lot about Beelzebul that I just can't rattle off the top of my head. But so there's all that. That's a crazy thing. So Jesus is like, they're going to insult you. They're going to claim that you have a demon. They're going to claim that you are a heretic. So that's in there. Then later on, there's a part where it's kind of odd. The translation's really not very good, but it says, Jesus says, don't fear the ones who can destroy the body but not the soul. And he says, fear the one who can destroy both body and soul in hell. It is how we have it translated here. That word is Gehenna. And Gehenna is an interesting situation with a whole lot of history. Now, Gehenna was a fiery trash heap, and I'll use trash heap very loosely, that was located in the valley of Hinnom. Yeah, I said that right, which is outside of Jerusalem. There's two major valleys that are outside the city of Jerusalem. One is the Kidron Valley, where you have to cross the Kidron Valley to go from the city of Jerusalem up to the Mount of Olives, which is where like the Garden of Gethsemane was, where Jesus prayed and was betrayed. So there's that. But then there's also on the south side of the city, there's the Valley of Hinnom. And in it is this burning trash heap. Now, this burning trash heap was used for a couple different things. One, it was used by the Romans in Jesus' time to burn the bodies of criminals who had been executed. And it was also, I've read this in some places, I don't know if I really buy it or not, but there's probably some truth to it. It was used as a trash, like a sanitation thing. Like the sanitation workers for the city would haul stuff there, if you follow my meaning, and they would burn it there, if you follow my meaning. So like it's a place where filth and where I said shit before. Why don't I say it again? Where shit would be burned and where dead bodies of condemned people would be burned. And so considering like the Jewish idea of cleanliness and uncleanliness, that's a very unclean place. You sure as heck don't want to get thrown there. Side note, there's speculation, I don't know if this is true or not, but there is speculation that is why Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus after he had died on the cross, so that his body, he being condemned by the Romans as an insurrectionist, that's why he was killed in the first place, would not be thrown into Gehenna. So there's that. Some other things that are going on with the Valley of Hinnom, or where Gehenna is, way back when, going back in Israel's history, there was child sacrifice that went on there, and worship of alternate gods, and some there was a couple of kings of, well, one of Israel and one of Judah that both did this. Ahab is the major one, and we think of King Ahab as like a bad king and did lots of bad stuff. And there's a couple of references in various spots, like back in the book of Second Kings and Chronicles in there, that talk about these kings who made their children pass through the fire to Moloch. Moloch is an alternate Canaanite, maybe Assyrian. I forget which culture had this other god, but they did that. So this idea of child sacrifice, which happened, was a reality, and we see aspects of that in the Old Testament, but that God, or that they did what is evil in the sight of God. So that all happened right there too. So there's all of this history in this crazy thing called Gehenna that through the years has come to become hell. Now, am I saying hell does not exist? Nope, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes when we hear hell in the New Testament, it's talking about Gehenna. This idea that Gehenna is a cursed place that can destroy. There's probably way more going on in that than I've just covered in the last couple of minutes talking about that, but that's one of those things that's going on too. So long story short, I've been talking for quite a while because there's a lot in here. There's a lot of different things that we could focus on, a lot of different things that we could look at. And most of it boils down to discipleship's going to have struggles. It's going to be hard. But don't be afraid of the trials that you will endure in life. Remember whose you are. And that's the direction I'm probably going to go with this, because also, side note, I've got a baptism this weekend in my congregation. So there's this idea of what happens in baptism. And interestingly enough, one of our other lessons in the lectionary this week comes out of Romans chapter 6 and talks about baptism, raises the question, why the heck am I not preaching on that? But I'm not, unless I do, because I haven't written the sermon yet. But this idea of, in baptism, we are claimed by God. We are bestowed with the identity, beloved child of God. So we remember through all this stuff of following Christ, all these hardships that we will face, all these struggles that we face in life, simply because our reality is broken and flawed, and humanity is broken and flawed, and we hurt one another, and we hurt ourselves, and we hurt others, and all of that stuff all tied in. We remember that we don't have to fear that stuff, because ultimately it's about whose we are. And whose we are is God's. And he is the one that we look to for our source of joy, our source of strength, our source of community, our source of salvation, all of this stuff. All of that which is good, all of that which is tov, if you know Hebrew, which you probably don't, but if you did, tov means good. Everything that is good, the source of all that is good, is God. And we find it within ourselves as well, broken as we are, because we bear the divine image of God, and God claims us as his own. And that distinction, this new humanity that's coming about through Christ, is all tied in and all a part of it. So that's what's happening. There's a ton going on here. I apologize this got long, but if you have thoughts or questions or comments, throw them down in the comment section. We'll continue the conversation that way. Otherwise, I hope you have a blessed week, and we will catch you next time.